colleagues, members of the media, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. For persons now joining us, I am Joanne Chinsang, Research Officer at NEHRST, and I'm very pleased to welcome you all to the internship experience portion of the first of the lecture series for the returning interns of the NASA 2015 International Internship Program, NASA I2. Facilitated by the Ministry of Science and Technology and NEHRST in collaboration with NASA, NASA I2 was developed to facilitate a structured educational exchange among students from Trinidad and Tobago, NASA's science and engineering workforce, interns from the United States, and visiting students from abroad. The first cycle of this partnership was implemented in 2014, and since then, 4 nationals from Trinidad and Tobago have had the unique opportunity to attend this prestigious internship at the NASA Ames Research Center in California. Our first 2 finalists, Mr. Jason Renwick and Mr. Stefan Hussain, attended the 2014 fall internship, and through the demonstration of excellence and good work ethic, were both invited to return in the spring and summer of 2015, respectively. The 2015 cycle of the program yielded 2 new finalists, Ms. Asha Williams, who presented a short while ago, and Mr. Inzamam Rahaman. This afternoon, our panel of speakers will consist of the 2015 summer internship finalists, Asha, Inzamam, as well as our 2014 finalist, Jason, all of whom will be speaking on their unique internship experiences during 2015. Our first speaker on the panel is Mr. Jason Renwick, a second-year student in the Department of Electrical and Computer Engineering at the University of the West Indies. His interest in computing began when he became a certified A+ technician in 2008 and deepened when he attended the UWI Department of Computing and Info Technology Bootcamp in 2011. As one of the first finalists from Trinidad and Tobago to attend the NASA I2 in 2014, Jason started his research at NASA's Prognostics Center of Excellence. He was invited to return in 2015 to continue his outstanding work in this area through the support of NEHRST and the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago, where he was recently the first recipient of the bank's inaugural Rudranath Kapildeo Young Scientist Award. Our second speaker this afternoon is Ms. Asha Williams, who graduated from the Department of Chemical Engineering of the New York University on the Dean's List in May 2015, and will be commencing a chemical engineering PhD program at the Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute within the coming month. Outside of the classroom, she is heavily involved in clubs and organizations, as she is currently a resident assistant at the dorms. Additionally, she is a member of the Women in Science Scholarship Program at NYU, where she conducts outreach events which encourage young women to pursue careers in science. Asha was selected for the research in human nutrient production in space at NASA. And finally, our last speaker this afternoon is Mr. Inzamam Rahaman, recently graduated from the Department of Computer Science at the University of the West Indies with first-class honors and also on the Dean's Honor Roll. He is also the recipient of the prize for the best first-year performance. His strong points include data analytics and full-stack web development. As a result of this, Inzamam was selected for research on geospatial web applications at NASA, which involved coding applications to visualize geospatial data such as earthquake data through the use of NASA's Web World Wind SDK and JavaScript. Okay, following the lectures by these 3 returning interns, the audience will have an opportunity to engage them in a question and answer panel discussion. And Mr. Jason Renwick would begin his presentation, followed by Asha and then Inzamam, and then the floor will be open for discussions. Jason, you have the floor.
All right, so you start with visa problems and maybe flight issues, maybe some bank hassles, about maybe 20 hours of transit time, a sprint through Dallas Airport, and a $50 taxi ride. All right, and 15 hours without food because not all airlines serve lunch on domestic flights. And you reach the NASA Ames Research Center in Mountain View, California. Also, in the heart of Silicon Valley. But what is Silicon Valley? There's no real definition given to such a place. There are only traits associated with it. And I'll share some of these traits, and maybe you can come up with your own definition. And maybe the most famous of all traits is its high concentration of tech companies, both big and small. The big being those tech giants such as Google, Microsoft, LinkedIn, and whatnot. The small being the many, many startup businesses all related to the tech or STEM fields. A second unique and probably famous trait is its high concentration of intelligence that comes from the many universities that reside in Northern California. These universities produce a mass of students who all specialize in electrical, computer, and computer science and its associated fields. They then go on to compete for the many job opportunities held there in Silicon Valley. A third and maybe less famous trait is the high level of appreciation for foreign nationals and foreign intellect. And these companies have absolutely no problem importing intelligence, and they actively seek foreign nationals from universities all over the world to work at their companies. One such example is last year, our own university, UWI, was approached by Boeing with the opportunity to send students to do an internship in Seattle. They actively sought foreign students to compete against their own domestic students for the positions of the internships, such as we had to do during our internship period. And when you combine these traits, you get an extremely competitive workforce. This competition breeds innovation, and one such way that startup businesses have decided they are going to try to get ahead of their market is through collaborations. You no longer see businesses being ruthless and competitive with each other. They are actively seeking to collaborate because they realize the importance of working together. And this collaboration isn't only centered around businesses or large companies. NASA collaborates with many, but it's also through people, and we know it by networking. And networking is one of the biggest advantages of being in Silicon Valley. Many times, I would visit coffee shops and meet complete strangers who would have an interest in my field, and I would have an interest in theirs. And we would share ideas and get to know each other, get to know their fields. And this can happen at any given time when visiting one. Another great way to network is through an extracurricular activity. NASA is one such place that appreciates and understands the importance of extracurricular activities in the workforce. They actively promote their scientists and their workers to participate. Being said, they have a club for any possible activity you can name. The ones that I was interested in was volleyball, tennis, and sailing. Multiple times a week, I would meet with coworkers from my group, or maybe not, to play volleyball or tennis. And it actually developed quite a close relationship between me and many scientists that I didn't know before. And as we get to NASA, we begin to see the sheer size and magnitude of where we visit, of where we have reached. In Trinidad, you can always guarantee that there's a shop, a parlor, a grocery nearby. Here, Stefan and I decided on our first day that we should get something to eat after our flight. We walked for an hour and a half before we found food. And that was when it cemented the need for a bicycle. And since then, our bicycle became our #1 means of transport. We took it everywhere. We visited as much as we could on our bikes. And California also realizes that many people need bicycles to survive. Hence, buses and trains both come equipped to carry bicycles about. So when we decided to visit another city such as San Francisco, we could actually take our bicycles on the train and cycle about a different city. Also, the lodge that we stayed at was located inside of NASA. And some days, let's say I got a flat tire in the morning, I would decide, well, I should walk to my office. And from the lodge to my office takes at least 30 minutes of walking, and I live inside its compound. So being on a 2,000-acre research facility makes UE look very, very small. Also, inside NASA, it's also home to a golf course, airfield, Hangar 1, as you see, which is one of the largest hangars in the world, a research park, and also it houses 2 branches of 2 universities. Next. Okay, while I was at NASA, I worked in the Intelligent Systems Division. And the only way to manage a facility this large is to make branches of groups and divisions. So under Intelligent Systems, we then have research fields. My specific one was Discovery and Systems Health. And then inside Discovery and Systems Health, we then had robotics and computer engineering, software engineering. And then we had diagnostics and prognostics. And our specialty was failures, detecting and mitigating the effects of failures. And most people may think that going to NASA means you go to this really serious research facility. But contrary to popular belief, most of my fellow researchers wore t-shirts and sometimes slippers to the office. They were very laid back, and this promoted something that I don't sense very much in Trinidad, and that is socializing in the workplace. They were very much into socializing in the office, and maybe multiple times a week we would go to dinner or go to lunch. And I believe every other week we would have a group meeting, as Asha mentioned before, where we would discuss ideas and maybe try to help each other. And I remember my first group meeting was very, very intimidating, but it turned out fine. And maybe after a few weeks, after having lunch with everyone and getting to know people, having a group meeting was very easy. It was much easier to open up and be open to the ideas or criticisms that they may have. Also, as I mentioned before, that these companies aren't afraid and are very welcoming to foreign intellect. Our group consisted of many foreign nationals. Because of this, I felt extremely welcome to be part of their research team, and they were very welcoming and helpful to me as well. At no point in time after the first day did I feel intimidated to ask questions or seek help. It was almost a shock to feel so normal in an institute of this magnitude. This here was a group shot taken in my last week. And directly to my left was my 2 mentors, basically. One was my immediate left, which is Dr. Chetan Kulkarni, and to his immediate left is Dr. Jose Celaya. And they were extremely helpful and willing to work with me. One thing that maybe after working in Silicon Valley for so long, they have developed the skill to recognize intellectual capacity. Not ability, but capacity. They saw my interest and were very willing to collaborate further and further my research that I did in my fall semester into spring. whereby we continued the research to the point that we could produce a paper. This meant stepping up my research project from an experiment, but to a conclusive and result-oriented experiment. With this in mind, we worked together tirelessly, not as fun as we look here, but to produce a paper. And one thing they taught me very, very in-depthly while I was there is that an internship wasn't based on the amount of knowledge you know or what you bring to the table, but your ability to learn quickly and apply what you learn. So I may only be an undergraduate student, but they realized that I had a willingness to learn and apply the knowledge that they share to our work. Hence, they invited me back for a second internship, which was spring of this year. And thus, we completed a poster, as you see, and a paper that will be presented in a conference, the International Journal of Prognostics and Health Management, in November. So, thank you, everyone. Questions will be asked at the end of our 3 presentations during the panel. But I'll now pass over to Asha to continue.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming to my second presentation. And if you were here for the first one, thanks for staying. So I'm going to talk a bit about my experience at Ames beyond the research aspect of the internship. These are some areas I'm going to cover, talk a bit about my internship, about Ames in general, the food, housing, and what we did for fun there. So where did I work? I worked within the NASA Space Biosciences Division, and within that division, there are 3 branches, and I worked in the bioengineering branch. This is a picture of the bioengineering building at Ames, and in our branch, they took pictures of all the interns in the first week and put it up on this poster board so everybody would know who we were. This is my office, well, was my office, where I spent most of my first 2 weeks because I had to do a lot of training, safety training modules to work in a wet lab around hazardous chemicals. I had 5 online training modules to do that were between an hour and a half in length, followed by exams that you had to pass. And at the end of all of that, they had like a practical safety boot camp to make sure that you actually know the material. So it's like a practical exam. And then I was finally allowed to work in the lab. So this is the lab group. I worked in Dr. John Hogan's lab. He is standing right next to me. And on my, at that end is Dr. Hiromi Kagawa. She was another mentor that I worked closely with. And the other 3 persons are interns. So I was the only international intern. Actually, I was the first international intern they ever took into their lab. So that was pretty cool. There were 2 other lab members who aren't shown in this picture. So what did I work on? As I explained in my last presentation, I worked on a bionutrients project, which is aimed at tackling the problem of nutrient degradation on long-term space missions. And how we did that was developing a way to produce those nutrients right there in space. And the nutrients that we focused on were targeting vision problems in astronauts. Oops. Okay. So my task was to design a disposable bioreactor for in situ production of the nutrients in space. So this is me in the lab, and I work 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., Monday to Friday, long days in the lab, lots of experiments to run, so you kind of have to coordinate to make sure you can finish everything within the 8 hours. So some days were more laid back than others, but generally they were long days. Okay, now I'm going to talk a bit about Ames. So Ames is one of 10 NASA field centers. It's located in the heart of Silicon Valley, like Jason explained. And it is housed within a research park that also has several university campuses, as well as military housing. So from time to time, you'd see some people, some Army people walking around. Also, it's federal property, which basically means that if you break any laws, you end up in federal prison. Oh, before I continue, I have another question. I still have to give you your prize. So I just mentioned this in my last slide. Can anybody tell me how many field centers NASA has? Not Jason. I just mentioned that Ames is one of. Is your hand raised? Yes. So I have some astronaut strawberries for you afterwards. Please remind me before I forget. Okay, so these are just some pictures from around the research park. As you can see, it's pretty scenic. There are lots of trees and grass, much greener than other parts of California with this drought. Ames Research Center also houses the largest wind tunnel in the world. So it's an 80 by 120-foot wind tunnel, and that's me standing at the bottom just to tell you how big it is. And wind tunnels are used in aerodynamic research to study the effects of wind moving or air moving past solid objects. There were also other smaller wind tunnels around the research center. And there was a model of SOFIA, which is the largest airborne observatory in the world. So being foreign at Ames, I have to talk a little bit about this because it kind of impacts your experience a bit. Firstly, there are a lot of security restrictions being international at Ames. So during my first 4 weeks, I had to be escorted into the research center. So I'd have to get to the gate, call my mentor, and he would have to come collect me. I'd have to show my New York State ID or passport. And I had a different badge before I got this one. And when you're international, you're also not allowed to enter certain buildings, which you probably wouldn't want to go into anyway, and you're not allowed on certain tours, so that's kind of a little setback. So this is the badge that I got after the 4 weeks when I got security clearance, and it was a very happy day because I was finally able to walk around on my own. And before I got this badge, international visitors wear a badge that's covered by a bright red cover, so everybody knows you're international. They could spot you from a mile away. And so that led to lots of questions. People would approach me and be like, oh, I see you're foreign. Where are you from? And then you tell them I'm from Trinidad and Tobago, and they want to know about Trinidad. So you have to do a bit of public relations for the Ministry of Tourism. And then you have people asking you very strange questions and making very strange comments. So you get to clear up misconceptions that they might have about Trinidad as well. So food is a very important part of my life. So cafeterias. There are 2 cafeterias available. There's one within the research center and then one outside of the research center within the research park. And the prices are reasonable. You can get lunch, dinner, snacks, and then they have happy hours. And also throughout the summer, there were picnics and barbecues where you can get some free food. There's food. The good thing about Silicon Valley is that there are a lot of food delivery and grocery delivery services that aren't available in other parts of the US. And if you don't have a car and you can't ride a bike like me, I depended a lot on food and grocery delivery services like Google Express and Instacart. And the good thing about Google Express is that you get the first 3 months free delivery, and then you can cancel your subscription, which is what I did. And if you don't want to eat at the cafeteria and you don't want to order food online, you can cook, which is what I did every single weekend. I cooked my meals for the entire week just because I didn't want to buy cafeteria food, and when I cooked, I can eat things that I wanted to eat. So housing at Ames. Most of the interns who were not from the Mountain View and Palo Alto area lived at the NASA Exchange Lodge. It's about a 10-minute walk from where I worked, because I worked right at the entrance of the research center, and I speed walked every morning because I couldn't ride a bike. There's housekeeping once a week where they change your linens, give you fresh towels, soap and shampoo, do some light cleaning. There's also a laundry building adjacent where you can do your laundry and drying. And there's a communal kitchen in each building, and that's where I cooked. These are just some pictures of what the lodge looked like. There were 3 floors in each building, and we lived on the bottom floor. So in case you were curious about what the rooms look like, this is my room. Thank you, Nihus, for making sure that I had my own room and I didn't have to deal with any potential roommate issues. It was a nice, spacious room. This is another view of the room. There's a full-size fridge, refrigerator, television. You can see my little Trinity flag in the background. And just a simple bathroom. So for fun, like I said, I worked 9 to 5, Monday to Friday, so we had the weekends off. And a bunch of us would always go exploring on weekends, other interns. So San Francisco is about an hour and a half away on the Caltrain, which is the commuter system in Southern California. And if you're going to San Francisco and you don't have a car and you don't have a bike, you need to wear some serious walking shoes because there are a lot of steep hills and the city is pretty big, so you have to walk a lot to get around. So in San Francisco, there's Chinatown where you can get good food and some cheap souvenir stuff. There's a Litte Italy with, again, really good food and artwork around the city. We made it as far as Fisherman's Wharf, which is a tourist area at the San Francisco waterfront. And then there were street fairs with craft items and food and free stuff. Who doesn't like free stuff? And in San Francisco, of course, there's a lot of shopping and sightseeing to be done. Also visited the Santa Cruz Beach and Boardwalk. This is what the beach looks like. It looks good, and that's about it. Water was freezing cold, so we just sat on the sand and talked for the entire time. And there's also a boardwalk behind it with rides and food. And then there was a visit to California's Great America with me, Stefan, and a couple of other interns. So there are rides like this that Stefan forced me to go on that made you really reconsider your life choices. And then there was a Snoopy Land, if you're a fan of Snoopy. That was really nice. Okay, and there were also things to do at the Research Center, so you didn't have to leave to do anything fun. So like I said, when you're international, you're restricted in terms of tours, but this was one of the tours that I was actually allowed to go on, and it was a tour of the fluid mechanics lab, where they give you some information, more information about aerodynamic research and how they test aircrafts and how they do modeling, so that was really interesting. And this was actually one of my favorite parts of the internship, the Ames Summer Series, which was a series of lectures from different people who came in and they were experts in their field. So the fields range from history, science fiction, technology, exploration. It was really a really good set of lectures that they had. And these are just a couple of the ones that I found to be more interesting. So there's Andy Weir, who is author of the book The Martian, which is about a Mars mission gone wrong. And the good thing about his book, or the interesting thing about it, is that everything in the book is scientifically accurate and mathematically correct. So he did all the calculations and research. So I found that was pretty cool if you're a nerdy and into stuff like that. There was also a town hall meeting with David Newman, who is the deputy director of NASA. So she's second in command for the whole of NASA. And when she visited Ames, it was such a big deal. She toured a couple of the labs on the base, and our lab got selected for the tour. So the day before she came, there was all this drama trying to prepare a presentation and put our experiments on display. And then she came, and there were a ton of cameras, and they videotaped everything. She shook our hands, which is a big deal. And then there was Robert Swan, who is the first man to ever walk unsupported to both the North and the South Poles, which I think is ridiculous, but he did it and he survived, and he's now a really great motivational speaker. So he came in to talk to us about leadership and how to motivate a group. And that was basically it. Thanks again to Nihis for the experience. It was really good.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. Okay, so before we begin, let's talk a bit about the Ames Research Center. So as both Jason and Asha pointed out, the Ames Research Center is located in Silicon Valley, more precisely, it's located in Moffett Field, which is sandwiched between the municipalities of Mountain View and Sunnyvale. Once upon a time, Moffett Field was actually a naval air base, and this airstrip you see here was still actually really quite active. It was originally founded on December 20th, 1939 for aerodynamics research. And since then, its operations have expanded to encompass areas ancillary to space exploration, such as prognostics and the research required for the heat shielding on the space shuttle. Ames also has several partnerships with industrial partners, such as CMU and Google. And since the fall of last year, Google now owns the airstrip. This is a picture of the famous Hangar 1 that at one point housed several dirigibles. It's been since stripped of its coating because its coating contained asbestos. If you can see here, this is how it would have appeared before its coating was stripped. As Asha mentioned, we stayed at the NASA Exchange Lodge. It was a lot like what a college dorm is in the U.S. We had like laundry room that was way into the back near some kind of creepyish abandoned buildings underneath a bunker. We had our housekeeping come like once a week. There's a little gazebo there where occasionally interns would hang out. And well, there's also in the background there, you also see one of Ames's industry partners, Singularity University. That was where their lectures were held, and that was their little area there. One of the cool things about being on such a large base is that there's a lot of green areas, and you see some pretty interesting wildlife. Like here you see a jackrabbit, and the crows. I actually thought crows were actually pretty small before actually seeing them for myself. They were actually about 2 to 3 times the size of the blackbirds that we have here. That actually surprised me. And they were quite noisy. They'd come at about 5 a.m. in the morning and start cawing. So at least you had a really nice alarm clock, right? Really accurate one. This is a picture of a squirrel. This was the building that I worked at, N244. It's the space project building. One of the cool things about this building is that it's a building that actually houses a lot of pretty interesting projects. For example, the SOFIA project is actually managed from this building. Also, we were actually pretty close to the airfield. So occasionally we'd see aircraft taking off and landing. Like we actually saw an F-22 land, as well as an old Soviet-style cargo ship. And we'd also have the Google helicopters that would hover around the area every now and then. Which was a bit, it was a bit loud sometimes because of that. With regards to the work, what I worked on, I worked on developing an SDK for geospatial visualization. It's part of the Whirlwind family of SDKs. This case here, it's an application to monitor and visualize earthquake data collected from by USGS servers. And this was another application we started building to consolidate urban management data for smart city initiatives. Like Asha said, there were some tours we couldn't go on, but we were able to go on some pretty cool ones. This here is my group was actually able to go on a VMS tour. We were actually given it by the former head of the building, which is pretty cool. we were actually able to go inside some of them, like this one here, that I'm inside of was actually a VMS that's actually certified to be a proper representation of a Boeing 747-3000 series. And this here is actually a shot of the VMS that's actually used to model spatial scenarios. Here is actually one of the smaller wind tunnels that is in the fluid dynamics laboratory. They do like small model testing here. One cool thing about Ames is that it draws a lot of brilliant minds. As Asher said, the director curriculums were quite excellent and quite intellectually enriching. This here is a picture of Friar Jose Funde. He's the head astronomer of the Vatican Observatory, and he gave a talk. And this was Dr. Temple Grandin, a famous animal behaviorist and expert in different learning styles. It was actually my favorite talk. She went over like how autism affects how different students learn and how different sort of learning styles can be incorporated into classrooms. A very nice and interesting talk, especially for somebody who is very interested in education. Now, to get around Ames, it's kind of difficult to do so without a bike. Like, I had to walk 30 minutes from the lodge to building N 244, and it was a bit hard to actually like do much of anything. And unfortunately, I didn't know how to ride a bike, so the solution was to learn how to ride a bike while I was there. So thankfully I made some friends who kind of to help me learn how to ride a bike. We actually started right outside of building 244. Thankfully, we didn't hit anyone's car. Something that I thought was pretty cool. I've never been on a train before, so that was pretty cool to be on. The Caltrains come like every half an hour and take you all throughout Silicon Valley. And something cool we also saw, occasionally we'd go out for lunch, and one day when we were going out for lunch, we actually saw one of Google's self-driving cars on the road. And it actually performed pretty well. Now, I guess you're wondering, like, if I couldn't ride a bike, how exactly I survived, right? Because, like, if I couldn't get food, and thankfully, delivery services, there are a lot of them. So, Google Express, DoorDash for the win. Once I was able to actually learn how to ride a bike, we actually get to go to some places. One of my favorite places to go, probably one of my favorite places in the world actually, was the Computer History Museum, which if you're a computer scientist or a computer engineer, it's such a wonderful place to be, because you see like a snapshot of how far your field has come. So like here is an example of a mechanical computer, one of the older ones, and this is actually a demonstration. This exhibit actually shows the progress that we've made in terms of storage. Microsoft's office was actually pretty nearby, so we were able to go and visit Microsoft's office. That was pretty close by. One of the coolest places to go was for lunch, and once you could actually like bike to it, was actually Castro Street, which I guess you could consider Mountain View's equivalent of the Avenue. There are a lot of like restaurants there, and occasionally there are like little like community events. Like on this Thursday, right before we left, they had a cover band like performing like old 80s music. Towards the end of the internship, we actually had the opportunity to present a lot of the project managers inside of building 244, sort of like a dry run for a poster presentation. And like with the poster presentation was a really nice experience, because you have like all these people like like scientists and engineers who are senior who come and they ask you questions and they validate your work. And something that was quite, we didn't actually know at the time, but there was this sort of oldish guy who came and asked questions on one of our posters. Now, we're not supposed to take pictures of the posters at the poster session, but this guy pulled his camera, was taking a picture, and well, nobody did anything, which is we were kind of worried somebody's going to do something, but because some of the education office was near our poster and was going to do anything, and we were like wondering, when we asked him what he did, he said, well, he retired, he just did some space stuff. And then we ended up finding out he was actually a former spatial commander. So that was pretty cool to know that, a former spatial commander thought your work was good. And well, we all had a group photo taken right at the culmination event. Like if you see, actually Asher is right here, Stefan is right here, and I'm over the corner there. I'm short, so I guess I was kind of fortunate after that. I didn't get cut off. But, so that's the end of my presentation.
All right, so questions, anyone? No.
This question is from Asha. I was wondering if you were not encouraged to ride a bike. Since you're come to find out to ride now, he knew before, he was forced to do it, so now you went to left, are you not encouraged to do it?
Yes. Actually, we planned a tutoring session. It was supposed to be me, Stefan, and Inzamam a Sunday morning. But then the day before that, we went to California's Great America, and nobody woke up. So that was just. But yeah, I will eventually.
So y'all invited to ask Jason to teach y'all to ride a bike.
Okay, so our internships didn't coincide, or else I would have been willing to teach. But it so happened that my flight left on maybe Saturday morning, and I believe you guys arrived on Sunday, right after I left. So we didn't actually get to meet until today. Okay, well, I'm from Santa Cruz.
I grew up in Arima, but we recently moved to Sangre Grande.
I'm from Chaguanas.
How have the internships affected your choice or consideration for your future careers? Have you decided what you're going to specialize in, or did you already know that?
Well, I kind of knew beforehand, so the reason I was interested in the internship was to get more research experience and see another aspect of the research process. So it just consolidated what I already wanted to do and what I'm already planning to pursue.
All right, well, I do electrical engineering in UE, and there are many fields or thematic areas you can go into, so it's a little confusing. And after participating in the internship, I'm pretty much a lot more confused now because I was exposed to a side of engineering that I didn't get to see in my limited time as an undergraduate. But I really did enjoy doing research, and I'll definitely be looking to do it again sometime soon.
I was sort of like divided between the more theoretical parts of computer science and the more applied fields such as data science, which my project actually fell under the umbrella of data science. And since participating in my internship, I have decided that I will prefer to specialize actually in data science as opposed to the more theoretical computer science.
So, in your application, you have to have your project signed already? Was it based on a project that you wanted to research that was all part of the application?
Well, for the application process, we were provided with the different research areas, and we just selected, I think, 3 research areas that we were interested in. And then we just had to speak a bit about research projects that we had done previously or that we were involved in.
What was
what was it based
I
on?
mean, what was the actual process? You had to be an undergrad, you have to be...
Yeah, you have to be an undergrad in one of the STEM fields. There's a minimum GPA requirement. You have to be a citizen of Trinidad and Tobago. And the rest of the criteria is on the NIHIS website, nihis.gov.tt.
So how you guys got taken out of the program?
For me personally, I got an email from the scholarship office in Trinidad the day before the deadline. And I was at work at the dorms working in the office, and I looked up on NIHIS website and read up on the research areas, and I was like, oh my God, I need to do this. So I had to run around and talk to professors to get recommendations in one day, which is really, yeah. But it all worked out, and I was able to submit my last minute application. So that's how my application process went.
For me, I'm part of an astronomy group on Facebook, and someone just posted it to the group and said maybe some of us should apply. At the time, I didn't pay much attention to it, but after some thought and a little reconsideration, I decided to apply and give it my best. So for me, someone just told me on Facebook, really, but it was a link to NIHIS's website that had all the information.
Well, I actually found out about it last year when a lecturer of mine actually pointed it out to me. However, I wasn't able to actually complete my application in time, and I followed on NIHIS's Facebook page because they mentioned that they would have a cycle for 2015. And well, I followed NIHIS's Facebook page and they posted it, and so I went to the link on their website, read it, made sure I had everything completed on time, and will submit my application.
All right, so as a returning intern, I did my first internship, which was 4 months in fall of last year, and then I returned for 4 months in spring of this year. And it made it a lot easier the second time around. I had no problems with transport. I already had a bicycle. I was accustomed to getting food. I knew my research field. I knew my scientists. And once I spent enough time with these guys, they were even more and more welcoming to include me in their projects, work, and social activities. So the second time around was extremely enjoyable, a lot more freeing. Not in a bad way, but I had my own room the second time around, so that comes with its benefits. Yeah, so that's what most of the differences of being a returning student is like.
Advice for people who would probably be going next year. Just don't be intimidated by the name NASA. The people there are really intelligent and passionate about research and their fields, but they are just people, and you can learn anything that they have there. What I learned was that you need to be confident in what you know and be open to learn new things and apply new knowledge, like Jason explained earlier. And another piece of advice is that while you're there, make the most of the people around you in terms of networking and talking to people about their research project and just meeting people outside of your own lab.
I guess advice would give would actually be the exact same thing Asher said, to try to be best to not be intimidated by the name, because NASA does have a huge legacy behind it, but like the people who drive this legacy are very willing to teach if you're willing to learn. So to try your best to actually take advantage of that opportunity. Yeah. So.
But before we continue this question, I just wanted to give my little piece to the advice to new interns or people applying is don't underestimate yourself, because I did a little and I was hesitant to apply, etc. because I saw the application, it was intimidating, and seeing it through and giving it my best for all of it did give me a really good reward at the end, and I was accepted to be an intern. So just advice to students, whoever here would like to apply, is don't underestimate yourself or be intimidated. Give it a shot.
Before we close this afternoon's public lecture, NEHRS would also firstly like to thank our panel of speakers for sharing their extraordinary experiences with us today. These young adults have demonstrated noteworthy leadership and diligence throughout the program, and we look forward to their future contributions to society. We also wish to thank the Ministry of Science and Technology and the U.S. Embassy of Trinidad and Tobago for their support in executing the program, as well as the sponsors, the National Gas Company of Trinidad and Tobago, the National Flour Mills, and the Central Bank of Trinidad and Tobago. A special thank you also goes out to the project team at NEHRS for their hard work in executing this year's NASA I2. And last but not least, we would like to thank the audience for their keen interest and prompting of lively discussions, and hope that you would be leaving this auditorium with a renewed enthusiasm for the evolving and cutting-edge research, science, and technology that has been instrumental in shaping today's world. And finally, I would like to make two announcements. The 2015 NASA I2 lecture series is scheduled to continue through September 2015, and the 2016 cycle of applications are scheduled to begin in October of this year. Please monitor the newspapers, NEHRS website, and NEHRS social media pages for further updates. Have a good evening, ladies and gentlemen.